Most people seem to think that if they can't speak English perfectly, they shouldn't speak English. Like they need to wait until they feel ready or something, right? Well, if that's true, I'd better shut my mouth because I make mistakes too, right? We all do. We're all humans and none of us are perfect. However, if you put a lot of pressure on yourself to communicate perfectly in English, this can cause so many problems at work or in your daily life and end up making you feel scared of speaking to people when you need to. And this has got to stop because speaking confidently and clearly actually has nothing to do with perfection. Today, I'll tell you what it's really about and how you can start working towards it. So let's get cracking. Welcome to the BritSpeak Pod, the podcast designed to help you feel more confident when you communicate in English. Hey up, mate. How you doing today? I'm not too bad. Thanks for asking, and welcome to episode 118 of the BritSpeak Pod, where today we're talking all about why you don't need perfect English if you want to communicate confidently and clearly in English. Now, if you're new around here, my name is Dan. I'm a CELTA-qualified British English teacher and communication coach, and my goal is to help you communicate more confidently in English. So if that sounds like you, welcome. You're in the right place. So before we get started with today's episode, I want to remind you all that the BritSpeak Summer Sprint is live. If you're listening to this in July, then yeah, it's available. It's for people who understand English pretty well but can't speak very confidently. You work with me for 12 weeks in live lessons, in video tutorials and daily practice with feedback. And yeah, basically it's everything you need to build your confidence. And there's a discount available until August 1st for the first 5 people that join. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, check the details in the show notes. Right. Today then, we're talking all about why perfect English is not real. And we're talking about how putting pressure on yourself to be perfect is probably hurting you more in the long run than you imagine, okay? So let's talk about why people do this, right? It's a kind of a defense mechanism in a way. Because let's imagine a situation, right? You are at work in a meeting or something and you make a mistake when you speak in English, right? And that causes some kind of misunderstanding. And that causes a problem at work and you can't fix that and it's your fault. And then maybe something bad happens. Maybe you get fired or your boss shouts at you or something, right? That fear is very real. You know, it's not that you wanted to do something like that. It's that you didn't have enough control over your English. Somebody misunderstood what you were trying to say and it caused a knock-on problem that you're to blame for, right? I understand that's terrifying, you know? Or this one is more common. You're terrified of being judged as less intelligent or not good at your job because of your English, right? Because your English is not perfect or high level enough, people might judge you as being not intelligent or not good at your job, when actually you are intelligent, you are very good at your job, just you're on that English learning journey and, you don't feel good enough in your English. That's a really, really common one, or maybe that your English not being perfect enough can cause you to miss out on life experiences. Maybe like at work, if we think about work, maybe interviews, maybe you don't get a job because you feel like your English wasn't perfect enough, or maybe you don't get a promotion, or, you don't get chosen for that business trip to that conference or whatever it is, right? Now, those are real life fears, right? And although there's many different causes for these situations to occur, they're not all necessarily because of your English, right? Like if you make a mistake at work, we all make mistakes, that's life. If you want to live a world where you never make mistakes, good luck for you, because that's not going to work. So you can make mistakes at work and most mistakes can be fixed, but that fear that the mistake is caused by your English is really, really strong. That's really bad. The people judging you as being less intelligent or good at your job, I put money on it that nobody is judging you as hard as you are judging yourself. Because the truth is, and we'll talk about it a bit more, Most people don't care. They don't. They're worrying about themselves. And that's true. You think about it. You don't really judge other people that much. You're worrying about yourself. Everybody's doing the same thing. And maybe you miss out on life experiences because your English is not perfect. I mean, there's a chance, but unless you're trying to get a job as like an English speaking professor or something, then probably it's not as big a deal as you think, right? But those fears are very real. They're very big, and they can have an impact. See, I made a mistake too. They can have an impact on your life, and that can be terrifying, right? Okay. So let's not pretend that fear doesn't exist. That exists. I understand why that exists, and we all feel it to some extent, right? But the solution is where people tend to go wrong. People see this fear, and to resolve this fear, they try to be perfect, right? They try to never, ever make mistakes. Now, I mean, literally about 5 sentences ago, I made a mistake. So whatever. We all make mistakes. It's natural. It's important. The only way to actually make any progress in English is through making mistakes, right? So if you're trying to avoid mistakes completely, you are playing the wrong game. That's not what this is about. Nobody learned a language without making mistakes. It's not possible. So stop trying to do that. Perfection is not real. It's just a trap that keeps you stuck, okay? But some people try that. They decide, okay, if I can't say it perfectly, I'm not going to say anything. Okay, if that's what you want, but that means you're going to be able to say very little in very few situations. And I don't know about you, but when I learn a second language, the whole point is that I want to communicate with people and I want to express my ideas and share things with people. So I don't know, if I can only do that when I speak perfectly, I'm going to be pretty quiet most of the time, to be honest. Like, to only speak when you feel ready and you know you can do it perfectly is such a backwards way of thinking about things. The other thing that people will do is they will stick with like rehearsed short answers. We talked about this in a previous episode of the podcast, but they'll just stick with the shortest possible version, the safest possible version of what they want to say. Because, if you only say 3 words, it's very easy to minimize the amount of mistakes you're going to make in 3 words, right? However, if you say you speak for 15 minutes, there's a lot of potential to make mistakes, right? So you're kind of reducing the potential to make mistakes by sticking with the shortest, safest answer. And we talked about that, why that's a bad idea in last week's episode, right? But this is what people do. To try and resolve this fear, this is the kind of thing that they do. They really, really restrict themselves in order to stay safe, right? But this causes quite a few problems. First of all, perfection isn't a real thing. Nothing in this world is perfect. You're not perfect in your native language. And I can 100% guarantee that. I might have never met you, but I can guarantee that you're not perfect in your native language. And you're okay with that, probably. You probably think, oh, well, I said that wrong, never mind. And you go through your daily life functioning as normal, no problem. However, suddenly in English, you decide that you need to be perfect and you put a bunch of pressure on yourself. Why? Take it from me. I'm a native speaker. I'm an English teacher. I'm a communication coach. Been doing this for 12 years. I make content online in front of the whole world to judge me, and I make mistakes too. So take it from me, you're allowed to make mistakes, okay? Like, put that in your head right now. You're allowed to make mistakes. That's fine. You're supposed to learn from mistakes. That's what you do. The other thing that I want you to understand is that most people, in fact, I'm going to go further, almost everybody doesn't care about your mistakes. Because they're worrying about themselves, especially if they're English learners too. They're going through the same thought process as you. They're not worried about what you're doing. They're worried about what they're doing. They're worried about their mistakes. They're worried about what they're saying. And native speakers are probably worried more about the task or the job or, what they're eating for the dinner when they get home than they are about your English. And if somebody is really, really bothered by your English, that says more about them than it does about you, okay? They're probably just a bit weird, okay? Now, yeah, it's not nice to make a mistake, right? And you're probably very anxious and very You're hyper aware of your mistakes. And that's probably human nature. And that's something we need to try and take some of that pressure off your shoulders. But honestly, the only person that gives a shit about your mistakes is you. So calm down, all right? Calm down. And I think this aversion to trying to speak English, or really confining your ability to speak in English to protect yourself, is way, way, way more harmful than the mistake could ever be. You know, we talked about it last week. If you're not willing to share your ideas, people are going to think that you haven't got any ideas. And if you're not willing to try and communicate with people, they're going to think that you don't want to speak to them. And that can affect your relationships, that can affect your career, that can affect basically your entire life. You're not learning a language to not use it, right? I mean, at least I'm not. I don't know about you guys. I don't think I've ever met anybody that's learning English to not use it. So why are you doing that to yourself, right? And the real truth of the matter is this, right? And this is really important. This is something I talk about all the time, and I teach it in all my courses and everything. Communication is not about perfection. It's not a grammar test. Nobody's going to give you a result at the end, unless you're doing like IELTS or something. But in regular, normal, important daily life things, it's not a grammar test. Nobody's going to give you a score at the end. Like, oh, that was a lovely job interview. By the way, I'd give your English probably a B2 level. What? Nobody's going to say that. So stop treating it like a test, because it's not a test. You know, the only real goal of communication is the exchange of ideas and information. That's it. It doesn't really matter how the package is delivered as long as the package arrives, you know, unless it's, you know, completely damaged and broken. I mean, if you've dealt with the Royal Mail in England, you might be aware of that. But the point is, if you can deliver the message or the information or the ideas, even if it's not perfectly done, that's more important, right? Because competence is far more about structure and clarity and calmness in the delivery than it is about perfect grammar or academic English. Okay? And this is a complete tangent. No normal person is impressed by academic English. A lot of people feel this need to use academic English. Most of us never, ever use that stuff. And we're not going to be impressed if you use it. We're going to be like, that was a weird choice of words. You know, so you don't need that kind of thing, all right? So take some of that pressure off your shoulders, okay? So now that we've established what people do and why it's not a good idea, let's talk about what actually helps. Now, all the people that I've ever worked with or I've ever met that are very confident in communicating in English, they do three things that help them, right? The first is they practice speaking every single day. This is non-negotiable. Now, I'm not saying you need to practice for hours. I'm not saying you need to have a conversation partner. I'm not saying that you need, you don't even need to do it with another person. You can do it on your own. That's fine. But you need to practice speaking every single day, even if it's just for 10 to 15 minutes, right? And you can do this in a bunch of different ways. You can do this through shadowing. Now, shadowing is where you listen to some audio and basically you try to mimic it. So you'll listen to a native speaker, maybe a YouTube video or a podcast or whatever. And at the end of the sentence, you pause it, you go back and listen to it again, you pause it, and then you repeat it. You try and copy the pronunciation, the intonation, the rhythm, that kind of stuff, right? Because intonation, rhythm, word stress are very important for delivering the message naturally, okay? So shadowing is a great way to do that. Totally free. You don't need anybody else. Takes 5 to 10 minutes. Summarizing. Go read an article or watch a YouTube video and then practice summarizing that for 30 seconds. Imagine you're telling your mate who hasn't read it what it's about. Simple. Very easy. Something we do in daily life all the time. Give it a go. Learn about it. Practice describing things. Look out of your window. What can you see? What's happening? Practice describing it. 2 to 3 minutes. Easy. Start an audio diary. Take your phone. At the end of the day, open the voice recording app. Talk about your day. What did you do today? 2 to 3 minutes. Easy. No problem. Quick response drills. Go to some kind of online conversation prompt starter. There's a bunch of them. Click the button. Whatever question it pops up with, Try and answer it within 3 seconds. Great, easy. None of these things are difficult. And they're not going to change your English overnight, let's be honest. But it's that consistent practice, it's that repetition that really builds the confidence and the ability to communicate clearly, right? It's one of those, it's non-negotiable. Everybody I've worked with that goes on to be really confident and communicate in English did this. So you need to start, if you're not doing it, start doing it today. It doesn't need to be big, doesn't need to be life-changing, and it doesn't even need to be good. It just needs to exist. Stop thinking, did I do a good job or a bad job? Because that's going to hurt your motivation. Just think, did I do the job? Yes or no? That's it. That's all it is. Because humans are never always good. We have good days, we have bad days. I was speaking to a student of mine this week. I won't say her name, but if she's listening to this, she'll know who she is. And she was just having a bad day in the lesson. Just generally, her brain was somewhere else and she struggled a bit in her English. Now, naturally, most people there would blame their English. And she probably would have done as well a few months ago. But we've been working a lot on mindset, and she came the next day and she was like, Dan, yesterday I had struggled in the lesson, but it wasn't my English's fault. I was just having a bad day. That's cool. I'm glad that she realized that, because that's a big thing. Not everything is because of your English, right? Sometimes we're just having a bad day, and that's how it goes, So the practice levels that out. The regular practice will make the difference between the good days and the bad days less. Okay. So start doing that. And yeah, I talk about it all the time. There's a million different ways to practice. If you aren't sure, I do offer something called the Speaking Practice Kickstarter. It's a 30-day program that gives you 30 days worth of speaking practice exercise. And, it kind of shows you what to do and how to do it to get you started on this process. If it's something you're interested in, you can check that out. Now, the other thing that everybody does who is a confident communicator is they learn communication frameworks. And we talked about some of these things before, like the PREP framework, the point, reason, example, point framework, or the STAR framework. This is a situation, task, action, result. And these are great ways to learn how to organize information and do it in a way that is easily accessible, and you can do it in real time. So there's less thinking involved when you communicate. Therefore, there's less stress on your brain, and therefore there's less chance that you're going to make a mistake. Okay? So communication frameworks, incredibly useful to learn. There's a bunch of them for different situations. It's something that I teach a lot in my courses. But yeah, and if you're interested in learning the first one I always teach is PREP. And there's a workshop in the description I'm going to talk about in a bit. It's totally free. That'll talk you through that process. So check that out. Okay. And the last and probably the most important thing that people do when they become confident communicators is they stop worrying about mistakes. I'm going to say it again. They stop worrying about mistakes because they understand that mistakes are unavoidable and actually they're good for progress. Instead, they take that effort that they were worrying about mistakes and they put it towards things like learning how to recover when things go wrong. Because things are going to go wrong, no matter what. No matter how much you try and avoid it, things are going to go wrong. The only way things aren't going to go wrong is if you never open your mouth, right? So instead of worrying about that, learn what to do when it happens. Recovery techniques, expressions for clarification, that kind of thing. That's where your effort should go. And if you do those 3 things, you're going to find that you start to feel way more confident. Okay? And let me be totally honest with you. Doing this stuff will be uncomfortable. It's going to push you out of your comfort zone. And it's not going to be nice. And it's going to take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. These things are going to take time. And you will make mistakes and it's going to feel bad. But you can do it. All you've got to do is try. Stop being scared to try, right? And just remember, the goal of communication is to be understood, not to impress people. Okay? So think about that. And like I said earlier, with the frameworks and stuff like that, if you want a bit more information, I've got a full free training workshop, right? It's called the Stop Struggling, Start Speaking Training Workshop. Totally free. And we go into greater detail about some of that stuff. I go through the prep method in quite a lot of detail, show you how to practice it. And it's totally free. The link is in the description. So check it out if that's something you're interested in. But that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back again with another one really soon. But until then, look after yourself. See you there.